So today for my modeling activity, I'm going to be going over how to find the slope of a line when given 2 points. I did this last week in my 8th grade algebra class for field study, and I put on, underneath the link, I put the notes that go along with what I'm doing on the whiteboard, which is what the students have, and that's pretty common for when we're teaching something new. We'll do direct instructions with notes where the teacher solves the problem and the students have to write down the steps, and then we move on to collaborative learning where the students and teacher figure out answers to the problem, and then we move on to independent activities where the students work on homework or another activity by themselves or with a partner. So I have my points written down. Now I'm going to write down the formula. So our formula to find 2 points, to find the slope of 2 points, is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And remember, this is the equation that we use to find the slope. And m is our slope. So, how am I going to find y2, y1, and x2, x1? I'm going to label these 2 points. So my first points are going to be my 1s, and my second point is going to be my 2s. So I'm going to go ahead and label the 2, x1, and the negative 3, y1. I'm going to go ahead and label my 5, x2, and my negative 6, y2. So now I know my y2 and my y1 and my x2 and my x1. My y2 is negative 6, my y1 is negative 3, my x2 is 5, and my x1 is 2. So I'm going to put these points into the equation. So I'm going to rewrite it. M equals my y2. When I look up at my points, y2 is negative 6. So I'm going to write negative 6 minus, I'm going to write minus or subtraction because that is what my formula says. I'm always going to stick to what my formula says. So I have negative 6 minus, what's my y1? I look up here, oh, here's y1, negative 3. So I'm going to write a parentheses because I have a subtraction sign and a negative sign. So I'm going to write my parentheses around negative 3 just so that I don't get confused about having a subtraction sign and a negative sign together. So I have my y2 and my y1. I'm going to write my bar. And now, if I look over at my equation, I notice that I have to find my x2 and x1. So if I look up, I know that x's always come before the y in a point. So I look, oh, right here, 5 is my x2. So I'm going to go ahead and write 5 in the x2 spot, minus, or the subtraction sign, because that's what my formula says, minus x1. I look up, oh, here's my last point, x1 is 2. So now I have my y2, which is negative 6, minus my y1, which is negative 3, over my x2, which is 5. I found that right here, and x1, 2, which is up here. So I'm just going to rewrite this equation down here. I'm going to solve. M equals negative 6 Oh, I have to remember my integer rules. I have two negatives. I have my subtraction sign and a negative. When I have two negatives, I remember that two negatives equal a positive. So I'm going to rewrite this down here as -6 plus a +3. And I know that because two negatives always make a positive. So I have my top, I have my y's, my y2 and my y1. Now I'm going to come down here and look at my x's. I'm going to rewrite them. So I have 5 minus 2. And I always like to write my equations or my problems. I would rather have an addition problem to solve rather than a subtraction problem. So I know that if I can make my subtraction problem an addition problem by making this 2 a negative. So I take my subtraction and I make it an addition problem. I just have to make sure that that subtraction bar has to go somewhere, so I give it to the 2. So now I have 2 addition problems that I can solve. So I have -6 plus a +3. So I look, what number is my biggest? I see that my -6 is the biggest number. So I already know that my number for the top is going to be a negative. So I look at -6 plus a +3. I know that's a -3. But if I don't know that, I can always put it in my calculator. Now I have 5 plus a -2. And I know that is a +3. I can do that in my head, but if I can't, I can always use my calculator. That's perfectly fine too. So let's see, can I reduce -3/3 down anymore? Yep, I think I can go ahead and simplify that into, I know that these 3's cancel out to give me a 1. And remember, don't forget that we have this subtraction bar. So since we have one subtraction bar, one negative bar, I know that my answer is going to be negative. So my answer is going to reduce down to -1. And I'm going to rewrite that. You can see that. Rewrite that as m, which is my slope, equals -1. And this is my answer. Okay. So this is how I would model the first problem in direct instruction in the classroom. And depending how I felt with the students, I would go ahead and either do like 2 or 3 problems collaboratively with them where I talk them through the problem, but they are answering the question. So I'm prompting the questions, but the students are the ones that give me the answers to like y2 or y1 or x2 and x1, and ultimately give me the answer. And then once I feel comfortable, I feel like they have a good handle on how to solve, they got a practice, like a homework sheet that they got to work on in class with a partner.